Hello, it's Prof.Yuki here with another deck profile. Sadly, it's not Great Nature, because that deck's not done yet. This deck has been done for a while, and I wasn't planning on making a deck profile on it, but my friend Mouse Beetle suggested that I should, so here we are. We're doing it. This is Dimension Police GrandGallop. Now, there are a few changes that I could make to this deck. I chose, when I built it, not to, but there are some changes you could do to this deck if we wanted to make it a bit better. So, keep that in mind. Alright, let's start with the grade 3s. We play more grade 3s than most decks. We play 4 copies of Bravest Rush GrandGallop. This is the newer GrandGallop. Stride skill is you give your Vanguard 4k power, and then if it has burst, you can counterblast 1 and give it another 4k. It's pretty good. Otherwise, if you have 2 or less cards in hand during the ride phase, you can stride without paying the cost. It's pretty cool. And otherwise, it has a rear guard skill. If your Vanguard attacks and it's 30k or more, this unit gains 4k power. And if your Vanguard's 60k, this unit gains 1 critical. So, it's a decent card, actually. It's pretty good. Definitely better in more ways than this one is, which we still run. So, 4 copies of new GrandGallop Bravest Rush, and 4 copies of Great Cosmic Hero GrandGallop. His GB2 no one cares about, like all the old grade 3 Striders. Their GB2s were pretty much useless. Still is, because it's a Vanguard GB2. When this unit attacks Vanguard, if its power is 22 or more, this unit gets a drive check. So, I mean, it's not as bad as most. If you can't stride and you can get him to 22,000 power or more, he's a triple drive, which isn't bad. And then his stride skill is, when you stride, the Vanguard gains 4k power, and on hit, counterblast 1, draw a card. Which is pretty good. Like, don't get me wrong, old GrandGallop and new GrandGallop are both really good. I prefer this for the raw power, but if you need to draw power, this one's better. To be honest, both of them you end up using a counterblast, so it's not bad. Unless you're not striding into a burst unit. Alright, grade 2s. We've got 4 copies of Grand Revolver. Alright, Grand Revolver is a very important grade 2. He has Act, counterblast 1 if your Vanguard's power is 15k or more. You can choose one of your other rear guards, and this and that unit gain 4k power. And if your Vanguard's power is 30k or more, this unit gets auto rear guard when the attack hits a Vanguard counter charge 2. Otherwise, it has Resist, which is pretty useful since this deck requires rear guards to be useful, and Grand Revolver is pretty good. And he's part of your counter charge engine. You don't need the counter charge 2 that often, though, luckily, but it's definitely very helpful, because you can end up needing it. We run 4 copies of your most useful grade 2. This is Cosmic Hero Grand Sub. What Grand Sub does is when this unit's power is increased to the effect of one of your cards, the unit's power ends up being 13k or greater, which is really easy since he's 9k, so you give him 4k and he's 13. Choose one of your Vanguards that gets 4k power, and it gets Vanguard when this unit attack hits. Choose one of your opponent's rear guards and retire it. The main reason is you can combo this with a bunch of other skills in order to give, like, say, let's take Grand Revolver. Grand Revolver can't give power to the Vanguard, but you can use this skill to give power to Grand Sub, and then Grand Sub will give power to the Vanguard. So, very useful card. Makes a bunch of combos. He's your main combo piece. Don't play him early, or you will suffer from it. You don't want to lose these guys. They will get attacked or retired. So, keep him around as much as possible. Next, we got 3 Grand Rifter. Grand Rifter is your Glimmer Breath clone for GrandGallop. Counterblast 1, so plus 1 when he's placed in a rear guard. If Vanguard with Gallop in the card name, you would pay the cost. If you do, this unit gets 4k power, and choose one of your Vanguards, and it gets 4k power. And auto Vanguard, once per turn, when this unit attacks a Vanguard, you may draw 1 card. So he gives draw power to the deck, which is really useful. He also is one of those cards that adds power to the Vanguard. So that's useful. The reason we don't run him at 4 is because you need 4 revolver for that counter charge and the resist unit. You need 4 sub because he's your main combo piece. And that only leaves you room for 3 of him. But, I mean, 3 of him is still better, is still way good anyway, so you'll see him a lot. Especially with the amount of draw power you can get with this deck. I run 4 Stride Fodder. This is Cosmic Hero Grand Rope. He's your Stride Fodder. He searches GrandGallop. If you have one GrandGallop and need the other one, you can call him and search him. He's a really useful card. It's Stride Fodder. Why wouldn't you run it? Next. Now, this is interchangeable. I run 4 copies of Grand Leaf. Cosmic Hero Grand Leaf. Grand Leaf is your perfect card. He's the burst perfect card, so he also has an act once per turn skill burst. If your Vanguard is 30k or more, until end of turn, this unit gets auto rear guard at the end of your turn. Return this card to your hand, and you have to pay the cost, which is a Soul Blast of 1. And if your Vanguard is 35 or more, he'll gain 4k power. So, he's a useful booster in case you want to push. And then he goes back to your hand, and you still have a perfect card. But you could also run the Enigma Perfect Guard, because for a Counterblast and a Soul Blast, you can add that card to your hand when a Burst Vanguard attacks, and then you get it back to your hand, which is really useful. And then if you had a certain amount of power, then you can countercharge, which refunds the the Counterblast cost for Enigma Calm, I think it's called, which is another great Perfect Guard. Or you can run the countercharge PGs. But, to be honest, I think Grand Reef and Enigma Calm are better than the countercharge PG. So I just run this. You really don't need the countercharge that often. Next, we run 3 copies of Grand Lady. Grand Lady is one of your best grade 1s. Because what she does is you rest her, then you choose 2 units and they gain 4k power. Yeah, if you have Vanguard the burst ability, you can give one of your other rear guys 4k power, and then if you rest her, it's out of burst unit on your board, then she just gives 4k power to the Vanguard. But this is cool because you can rest Grand Lady, get 4k power to the Vanguard, then if you have a burst Vanguard, you can give 4k power to Grand Sub, and then Grand Sub gives 4k power to the Vanguard. Power because power because power because power. That is what I love about Dimension Police, and the only reason I don't want to main, like, I love Dimension Police, especially since in Buddy Fight I play Hero World, and I really do love the Dimension Police. My only problem with it is I'm not a huge fan of the playstyle of D-Robos, and Great Nature is just too cool. So if Great Nature didn't exist and GrandGallop was better, I'd probably play DP more. But, you know, whatever. Or if Enigmas were better, but they're not. So, oh well. So we do run some Enigmas in this deck. I run Enigma Blanc, because what he does is at the beginning of your attack step, you can pay a cost, which is the name to the soul. If you do, you can countercharge 1, which is pretty useful. And while he's in the soul, you can Soul Blast him. And if your Vanguard is 10k or greater, which is basically inherent, choose one of your Vanguards with a burst ability and it gets 4k power. And if your Vanguard is 35 or greater, choose one of your Vanguards to give 4k. So you can give your unit 8k just for sending it from the soul to the drop zone, which is very useful when you're in your power plays. Alright, that's the last of the grade 1s. We're on to the triggers. And the first trigger we are running is 4 copies of Saving Dolphin. Saving Dolphin is your heal trigger. It is a Soul Blast countercharge heal trigger when you G-Guard with the G-Guardian that goes with it. So it is definitely useful. More countercharge. We have countercharge in Blanc, your revolvers, and another card later in the deck that I'll get to. So you have plenty of countercharge. You don't counterblast that much to need any countercharge PGs. Alright, next we run 3 copies of Operator Girl Linka. Now this is what makes the deck sort of like D-Robos. And what it does is you can send it to the soul, and if your Vanguard is 20k or greater, you can draw a card, which is inherent if you've Strode. And then if your Vanguard is 35 or more, choose one of your Vanguards with burst ability and give it this effect. Vanguard, Soul Blast 1, when you drive check reveals grade 3, you may pay the cost. If you do, choose Sentinel in the opponent's Guardian Circle, and its ability to nullify gets nullified. You could run 4 of this and 4 of the next stand trigger I'm about to show you and take out the 2 crits, but I like the extra crit. Plus, you don't absolutely need to run stands. In fact, you could run rainbow triggers in this deck. You could run 4 of Linka, 4 of a draw trigger, 4 of a crit, or something like that. And then 4 heals, and be completely fine. Except for the fact, because you're not really relying on the trigger itself, as more you're relying on the effects of the triggers. So, of the actual card. So, yeah. Plus, the draw power would definitely help with the draw triggers. But then again, this also has draw power. This is Operator Girl Reika. And what Reika does is choose, put this on the top of the deck, choose one of your vanguards, and it gets 4k power. Then it gets also this skill, Auto Vanguard. When this unit attacks the Vanguard, if this unit's power is 37k or greater, draw a card. So you can stack this. You can just keep sending them to the deck. Well, if you have a bunch in here, you just send them to the deck. And then you can draw like 3 cards or something like that, which is really good. So this is still draw power in of itself, and it's recycling stands. So that's why I run her over draw triggers. So, plus it makes your rear guards scarier than they really are. Because your Vanguard is already scary, so why not make everything scary? Alright, next we run 2 Enigma Fall. This is just some extra crits. You could take this out for 2 draw if you want. Actually, I might even do that. Take this out for 2 draw, and then run 6 stand, 4 crit, and 2 draw. Which actually might help the deck a lot. So definitely, if you want to build this deck, keep that in mind. I really do like GrandGallop, though. This deck is actually pretty fun, as long as you're not fighting anything meta. If you're not fighting anything meta, this deck will do fine. Because it's actually quite hard to consistently guard against unless you have a lot of draw power. So if you're fighting Great Nature, you might be boned. Which is why Great Nature is better. And why I like it. But, like, say you're fighting... what's a non-meta deck? Or anything that doesn't disrupt your field. I've actually had a fine time against, like, decks that don't interfere with your board that are meta. So, like... Battle Sisters, if you don't get rushed too hard, who am I kidding? You are going to get rushed, so never mind. Luard doesn't really do anything to your board unless they get grade 1 or lowers on the drive checks of, well, on the skill of or guys are doomed. But other than that, they really don't mess with your board too much. I haven't had the matchup yet, but it's possible you could win. I mean, then again, in Vanguard, you can win against anything. With anything, as long as you get lucky. Anyway, moving on. We got Cosmic Hero Grand Beat. Grand Beat's your crit is your GrandGallop crit. Use the soul, you draw a card, give Vanguard 5k power. Pretty standard card for any GrandGallop deck. And then we have the starter, which is Grand Hop. You can rest this unit, and if your Vanguard is 25 or greater, choose one of your units, so it gets 4k power. It's any unit, so it can be your Vanguard or any rear guard. And at the end of the turn, if your Vanguard's power is 35 or greater, you may put this card into the soul, draw a card, and countercharge. So, more countercharge. This deck is really nice. If only everything wasn't so crazy, this deck I feel like could actually be really good. But the game is pretty crazy right now, with how strong the meta is. I mean, we have a big meta game, don't get me wrong. Our meta isn't horrible. We have a bunch of different decks, unlike Yu-Gi-Oh! Who has like 2 decks per format, it seems. It's been like that for a while. But we have a lot of different clans that are in the meta, which is good. It's just some of the stuff that gets less support, it definitely does get left behind. But it's not that it's not fun to play. This deck is definitely fun to play. Anyways, on to the G Zone. Now, I like to go in alphabetical order. So this is how I'd order it if I was playing the deck, like, at a tournament. So... we have 2 copies of the Generation Break 8 Dimensional Robo Overall Command Ultimate Die King. He is amazing. We run 2 of him because if some amazing thing happens and they live the first one, there's no flipping way they're living the second one. I mean, come on. Can you survive 2 90k attacks? I don't think so. So, he's definitely a must-have. You fill your board, he gets 1,000,000 power, he gets 1,000,000 crits, your field gets 1,000,000 power. How could it go wrong? If you don't know what Die King does, when this unit attacks Vanguard, when this unit's power, this unit gets power plus 10k, and 1 critical for each of your rear guards until end of that battle. At the end of that battle, if the team's power is 80k or greater, all of your rear guards gain 10k power for each critical this unit has. So, if you have a full board, then he's going to hit, he's going to be 26 plus 50, so that's going to be 76 right there, plus the stride skill we'll get from GrandGallop, from the new GrandGallop will hit you over 80k right there. And then plus your boost, because your boost counts. And then all of your rear guards gain 10k for every critical he has, which would be 6, because he'd gain 5 crits plus the inherent crit. So he'd be at 6 crit. And that's not to mention if you just on purpose give him crits just to give them more power, which would be funny. Anyway, Die King is a pretty crazy GB8. Next we play 2 Galactic Governor, Commander Laurel D. Commander Laurel D is fun. I've actually had a person where they let him hit, he restood, and then I attacked, they guarded, and then stood for. And it was like, what was the point of guarding the first one? Not guarding the first one. But anyway, he's a fun card. He's wacky because he's only a 4,000 power G unit. Yeah. But what he does is you can choose 4 of your rear guards and rest them. And if this unit's power is 20k or greater, which is not hard because you get an inherent 15,000 power. So his stride skill is 21. That's not bad. No, it's 23. Anyway, with stride skill from the new Gallop, it's 23. So, if he's 20k or greater, he gets once per turn when this unit attack hits a Vanguard, stand its unit. And then if he's 25 or greater, he gets once per turn at the end of battle this unit attacked. If the attack did not hit, choose all your rear guards and choose 4 of your rear guards and stand them. He's an okay card. He's not bad. We don't have a lot of options in Dimension Place. He's definitely not a bad card by any means, because he can definitely force out some guard if you really need that. The only problem is he's not a flipper. He's 4k power, and on top of that, he's not that hard to block since he has inherently low power. But that's fine. Next we have, oh look at that SP, and then there's 3 triple rares, but that's okay. That's okay. This is Super Cosmic Hero X Gallop. This is the Gallop Stride. His skills: Generation Break 2, Counter Boss 1, and flip a card face up your G zone. When this unit attacks Vanguard, if its power is 35 or greater, pay the cost. If he just gains Drive +1, and if this unit is 40k or greater, all of your front and rear guards gain 4k power for each copy of this card face up the G zone. Now, he's one of the first Quadra Drive cards. Actually, I think he was the first Quadra Drive card. This is what made this cool, okay? Dimension Police made this cool. Now, if only Great Nature can get a Quadra Drive card, that'd be cool. Or some guard restrict on the Vanguard, maybe? I mean, not that would really matter to Great Nature, since our Vanguards don't normally get that big, but hey, it's something. That could happen. Anyway, X Gallop's pretty awesome. Normally, you want to flip him up with this, because this is your ideal first stride. We'll get to him later. But he's your Quadra Drive. You really want to use him in conjunction with that stand trigger that nullifies Sentinels, so that way you'll make him scarier. Because if you have her in the soul and he's attacking, they have to worry about Quadra Drive, and they can't really perfect guard it, because you're running 8 grade 3s. That's why we run the 8 grade 3s, is because we want that to actually proc and not be depending on it. I mean, we have to kind of depend on it, because that's the only thing that makes this deck even slightly scary. Unlike D-Robos, who have Leon, who can retire any Guardian, and that's what makes stupid freaking dimensional Robos broken. No offense to you D-Robo players, but that's just so annoying. It's not even funny. That, and you can stride pre before anyone else. If we're at grade 2 and you're at grade 3, here comes Die Earth with that starter of yours. So, yeah, a bit annoying. Anyway, we also have Super Cosmic Hero X Lead, What X League does is when an attack hits a Vanguard, if it's 35k or greater, you can draw a card, and if it's 40k or greater, you can choose one of your rear guards and stand it, which is a really useful on-hit skill, but that's not the reason you run him. The reason you run him is because he goes once per turn. You can choose a face-down card in your G-Zone turn face up, and you can choose up to 5 rear guards and rest them, and for each unit rested, choose one of your rear guards, and that unit gains 4k power. You don't want to rest too many units, but you can rest a couple and then use their skills to get them out of the way. And then you can give power to, like, you know, Sub, and then Sub will give power to him. So, hooray. Oh, wait, no. It gives this unit 4k power. Never mind. Still gives itself 4k power. That's what we want. Because then you can make him 35 or greater, and then when he hits, you can draw a card. But the main thing is you use him to flip up X Gallop, so that way you have 2 face up, so your front row gains 8k power, which is cool. So, useful card. Next, we run 2 copies of X Tiger, Super Cosmic Hero X Tiger. What he does is you can choose face down card in G-Zone, turn face up. Once he attacks Vanguard and pay the cost, if you do this, he gains 4k power for each card face from your G-Zone. And if his power becomes 45 or greater, then he gets +1 critical. So, he is a major powerhouse in the late game and can really end games against weaker decks who have small hands. This deck destroys hands. And if you can't build a good hand, this will ruin you. If you use all your perfect cards up and they stride this, if they're still kicking after you use all your perfect cards, this comes out and you might have a problem. So, this guy is definitely fun to slap on the board. And you can flip anything you want. So, say you're not using those laurels, flip them. Say you know you're going to win this turn because they have like 2 cards in hand. You stride X Tiger and you're not GB8. You can just flip a Die King because who the freak cares? Good card. Dismal. This is the G Guardians now. You run Dismal because you need your rear guards, and if they don't kill them before the battle phase, like say they leave Sub for some reason, Dismal, protect Sub, and then it goes to the G Zone, and everything's happy because now you have a Sub for the next turn, which is good. This deck only runs 4 G Guardians because you don't really last that long. And, I mean, you could take out a Laurel D or a DB8, your preference, for another G Guardian. I would probably do Indian Patriot. Oh, God. Dropping our camera is professional. So, you could definitely add in a Patriot if you wanted to take out a Laurel D or a Die King. So, that's definitely something you could do if you really wanted to. We also run GO5. Great Guardian GO5. You can Soul Blast 1, and he gains Soul Blast 1 card that has 5k or greater power. And this unit, when it's placed in Guardian Circle, this unit gets 10k power, and if you've already taken the damage, he gains 5k power, 5k shield. So he's a 30 shield, which is really good, or he's a 25 shield for a Soul Blast, which is pretty good. Very good card. We run the Dolphin G Guardian. You can just flip a G unit, and this unit gains 5k power for each of your rear guards. And if he's 30k shield or greater, you can countercharge and soul charge. Pretty good. I've never really used its skill that often, because most matchups you end up getting your rear guard absolutely obliterated. So, yeah. And then we have probably the unexpectedly most annoying G Guardian to use, and that is Excaravu. Excaravu is good, but I never find myself using him. They're always under that freaking 30k power thing in order to get the 10k shield. It's like, I attack for like 29, and you're like, mother of pearl. But it's okay, that's why you'd probably run an Enigma Patriot instead of another copy of Laurel D. But that's okay. So it's when it's placed in Guardian Circle, if the attacking unit's power is 30k or greater, you can get 10k shield. Then if you choose a card from hand and discard it, you can choose one of your Vanguards and it gets 4k power for the turn. Which is really useful, because now you're 15k, and that helps block a lot of attacks that are pokey like Gear Chronicle tends to do. So that's the deck. That is my deck profile on GrandGallop. I hope you enjoyed it. I enjoyed making it. It's a fun deck. It's not exactly the meta, but it's not exactly weak either. I mean, the whole point of Dimension Police is to gain as much power as possible, to become as powerful as possible, to gain pluses off of getting more power. There's a lot of power involved in this deck, which is fun. Because who doesn't like making immense freaking Vanguard attacks only to have them perfect guarded? Tier. Whatever. That may be the downfall of the deck, but that doesn't mean it's not fun to play. Especially when you catch your opponent off guard with when they don't have any perfect cards in their hand. You swing at them for like 80k power, and they're like, yeah, I can't guard that. You're like, I know. Die. And you don't hit any critical triggers because we only play like 6. But that's okay. That's why you have Die King, because he gains 6 crits. You can end the game right there. If they didn't take any damage all game, you swing at them with Die King, and then they lose. It's perfect. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed learning about GrandGallop with me. Hopefully, I can talk. You know, talking's hard. Anyway, I have plans for another video next week where I'm going to be talking about the Zoo Booster and some stuff that I think Great Nature could get in this set. Not so much abilities, but like cards that we could get, like just bare bones things we would need that I think would help the deck immensely. And I'll see you in that video next week in the classroom. Prof.Yuki out.